I want to help you run a faster marathon, a better marathon, where you feel better, you have less risk of injuries, and you just are more proud of the performance. But the marathon is a really hard event. 26.2 miles, 42.2 kilometers. This is one of the most grueling and challenging types of races that most runners will ever try to attempt. So I want to go over some of the biggest mistakes that I see, because I see a lot of them as you get ready for a marathon. Whether this is your 20th marathon or your first marathon, I want you to set yourself up to succeed. And I've seen a lot of runners start to fail even before they even begin training for their marathon. So let's talk more about how to set yourself up for success before you ever even start training for that marathon. Now, the thing that makes the marathon unique is that you can't just train for the marathon. You have to train for the training. You actually have to be ready for the marathon training that's required to get you ready for 26.2 miles. And so that's why you'll never see a couch to marathon program. You can't just start training for a marathon. You've got to be ready for the training. And one of the things that I like to look for is a runner capable of doing about 10 miles at least 16 weeks out from the marathon as their long run? If you're comfortable doing a double-digit long run at least 16 weeks out from the marathon, you probably have enough runway, enough time before the race to safely build your long run distance up to about 20 miles to ensure that you're actually ready to run the marathon itself. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see, and it's one of the reasons why runners are not achieving as much in the marathon as they would like. They don't have as much experience as is needed in the long run to guarantee success in the marathon. Now, of course, nothing will guarantee success in the marathon, but if you are comfortable running about 15 miles pretty much all the time, you will be a good marathoner. That means you can start your marathon training easily running 14 or 15 miles, and you don't have to spend all that time building the distance. You can then get in more of those longer long runs, and you can start doing some goal pace running within your long runs. So make sure you have the time to safely build your long run, and that's usually about 10 miles or so, roughly 16 weeks out from the race. If you could do that, you can train for a marathon. Now, the cousin to signing up for a marathon before you're really ready for the training is, even if you are ready for the training, rushing that training. So let's say you are comfortable running 13 or 14 miles, but you want to run a marathon in 10 weeks, and your overall weekly mileage is maybe only about 25 miles a week. If you have an aggressive time goal, if you want to qualify for Boston, if you want to run a big fancy PR, if you actually want to feel good in the race, especially over the last 5 or 6 miles that are particularly challenging, and if you want to reduce your injury risk, you are still going to have to rush that long run progression. You're going to have to rush your workouts and overall mileage so that you're actually ready for the marathon in about 10 weeks in this example. So you can see how even if you are ready for the training, you still might not have enough time to get ready properly for a 26.2 mile race. And that's going to lead you to rush. It's going to lead you to build that long run too quickly. It's going to lead you to do workouts that you might not be ready for. So let's make sure that we both have the time to train and that we're ready for that training. If you can do that, then all of the rest of marathon training will probably fit right into place, because you won't be making some of the biggest mistakes that marathoners make. Oh, hey, you caught me after a run doing some real pro recovery over here, and I want to talk to you about our new sponsor, Gnarly Nutrition. They're doing some great things for athletes, and I'm super excited to partner with them. They have some of my favorite nutrition supplements for runners, including a great pre-workout that I like because it has no caffeine and it gives you a nice little boost without the jitteriness of caffeine. Also, branched chain amino acids. I love taking these after a really hard run or a really long run where I know that there needs to be some substantial muscle recovery. And then finally, whey grass-fed protein shake. If you get the chocolate flavor, you are going to have, hands down, my favorite chocolate whey protein powder of all time. It is the tastiest protein powder you can find. I am a big fan of Gnarly Nutrition because this is a company of, by, and for runners. Their team is made up of mountain athletes and endurance runners. They know what it takes to fuel and to recover from all that running. Not only that, but all of their products are NSF certified. That means they're clean for safe sport. So if you're competing and you want to make sure that there's no banned substances in your products, or you just want to make sure that everything that's in the label is what you're ingesting, nothing else, it's great to look for that NSF label. And all their products come in these great tin tubs. So that means you're not having any extra plastic waste. So thank you, Gnarly Nutrition, for sponsoring our video channel. Go to gnarly.com, use code gnarly20, and you'll save 20% off. Finally, our next big mistake when it comes to marathon training, before you even start, is having a poor time goal. Now, all of us want to improve, and I'm a big fan of having stretch goals. Those goals that are challenging to achieve. Those goals that push you out of your comfort zone. And if you don't have a goal like that, if you're constantly wondering if maybe your goal is too easy, you probably don't have a stretch goal, and I would encourage you to be a little bit more aggressive. But with that said, we can't be too aggressive. All of our goals have to be realistic, or at least somewhere in that zone of being realistic. And so in the marathon, a lot can happen. And that's actually a good thing. There's a lot of uncertainty with marathon racing because it's a very challenging event. I like to call the final 10K of a marathon the Wild West. You never know what's going to happen out there. And that means a breakthrough is more likely in a marathon than, say, a 5K. If you race a bunch of 5Ks, you are going to really know how to race a 5K, how to fuel for a 5K, how to pace a 5K. But the learning curve for a marathon is a little bit bigger. It's going to take you longer to get good at a race this complex and this long. And so we really need to make sure that we're comfortable with that distance. We need to make sure that we've properly trained for that distance. And if we have, that means some magic can happen on race day. You might be able to have a breakthrough. And that means you could improve substantially. I've seen runners improve by 45 minutes in the marathon. But if your PR is still pretty competitive, let's say you're a 3:15 marathoner and you want to qualify for Boston, you've got to get under 3:05. So that means you probably have to run 3:02 or 3:03. That's a big improvement right there because your time is already competitive. The better you are, the more competitive you are, the faster you are, the harder it is to keep improving. So that means we need to get our training right, to give ourselves more of that runway, to give ourselves the time to train properly and the time to have an appropriate time goal. One that is realistic, one that will push us, but also one that we can actually achieve. And I think one of the best ways of knowing what your marathon goal should be is to look at your other race performances. Let's look at your half marathon PR. Let's look at your 10K PR. All of your other PRs give us a good amount of data of what your fitness level is like right now, what you're capable of. And if you're capable of some fast times in the shorter distances, you're going to be much more likely to run a fast time in the marathon. So there we go. Let's respect the marathon. Let's recognize it as a challenging event. Let's give ourselves the time we need to train appropriately. Let's have aggressive but still realistic time goals, and let's not rush the training because that's going to increase our injury risk and it's going to mean you're going to be less prepared on race day. When it comes to really challenging events like the marathon, I like to see runners as prepared as possible, as strategic as possible. Because after all, if you have a bad marathon, you're gonna have to wait a while to run your next marathon. And that means your preparation is you're gonna have to do everything all over again. The marathon's one of those races where you do put all of your eggs in one basket, as opposed to say the 5K, where if you don't have a good race, you can try again next weekend. It's okay, you can just do it again. So if we respect the marathon and then the training that is required, we're gonna be better marathoners.